I'm sitting in a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning when I notice him across the room. He's scrolling through his phone, but every few seconds his eyes flick up toward me. Not in a creepy way. More like he's checking if I'm still there. Like he's trying to memorize something. I pretend not to notice, but I do. I always do. And here's the thing, this isn't about vanity or ego. It's about pattern recognition. Because once you understand how a man's mind works when he's fantasizing about you, you start seeing the signs everywhere. They're not hiding it as well as they think they are. Their attention gives them away. Their timing gives them away. The way they linger on certain words when they text you. The way they pause just a beat too long when you're talking. It all tells a story. And most women miss it because they're too busy second-guessing themselves, wondering if they're imagining things. But you're not imagining it. You're picking up on something real. Something primal. Because when a man is fantasizing about you, his whole energy shifts. He starts creating scenarios in his head. He replays conversations. He imagines what it would be like to be close to you, to touch you, to have you see him the way he sees you. And the wildest part? He doesn't even realize how obvious he's being. His body language betrays him. His texting habits betray him. The way he shows up, or doesn't, betrays him. So if you've ever wondered whether he's thinking about you in that way, whether you're on his mind when he's alone, whether he's building you up into something more than just a friend or acquaintance, keep watching. Because I'm about to walk you through the 5 signs that he's absolutely fantasizing about you right now. The First Defiance. The first time I really noticed it, I was at a work event. Nothing fancy, just a casual happy hour with colleagues. He wasn't even someone I thought about that way. We'd talked a few times, exchanged some jokes, but nothing that felt charged. Until that night. He kept finding reasons to be near me. Not in my face, not pushy, just present. He'd drift over when I was getting a drink. He'd laugh a little too hard at things I said, and then I caught it. The way his eyes would drop to my mouth when I was talking. Just for a second, like he was imagining something. It felt like a violation, but not the kind that made me uncomfortable. More like a boundary had been crossed without either of us acknowledging it. I didn't say anything. I just filed it away. But later that night, he texted me. Nothing wild. Just, hey, had a good time tonight. Except it was sent at 11:47 p.m. He'd been thinking about me for hours after we left. He'd probably been replaying the whole night in his head, looking for a reason to reach out. And that's when I realized he wasn't just being friendly. He was creating a story in his mind where I was the main character, where we were more than what we actually were. And the thing is, men do this all the time. They build fantasies around women they're drawn to. They imagine conversations that haven't happened yet. They picture scenarios where you're laughing together, where you're closer, where something finally shifts between you. It's not always sexual, but it's always intimate. It's always more than what's happening in reality. The internal shift. I started paying attention after that. Not obsessively, just curiously. I wanted to see if I was right. And the more I watched, the more I saw it. The way he'd text me first. Always. The way he'd ask questions that felt like he was trying to keep the conversation going, even when there was nothing left to say. The way he'd mention things I'd told him weeks ago, like he'd been holding on to them. Like they mattered. And I realized something about myself in that moment. I wasn't flattered. I wasn't excited. I was just aware. I could see what was happening, and I could choose what to do with it. That's the shift. That's the moment when you stop being reactive and start being strategic. Because once you understand that he's fantasizing about you, you hold a kind of power. Not in a manipulative way, but in a self-aware way. You can decide if you want to encourage it, redirect it, or shut it down completely. You're not at the mercy of his attention anymore. You're in control of how you respond to it. And that changes everything. So I started watching for the signs. Not just with him, but with other men too. And I started seeing the same patterns over and over again. The same tells. The same giveaways. And I'm going to share them with you now, because once you know what to look for, you'll never miss it again. Sign 1. Here's the first sign: he always texts you first. And I don't just mean occasionally, I mean consistently, like clockwork. He's the one initiating. He's the one finding reasons to reach out. He's the one sending you memes, articles, random thoughts, anything to keep the connection alive. And here's why that matters. It means you're on his mind when you're not even around. He's thinking about you during his day. He's wondering what you're doing. He's looking for an excuse to engage with you, even if it's just a stupid joke or a "how was your day" text. This is classic fantasy behavior, because when a man is fantasizing about you, you become a presence in his mental space. He's not just responding to you when you reach out. He's actively seeking you out. He's making sure you don't forget about him. He's creating opportunities for interaction because, in his head, every conversation is building towards something. Maybe he doesn't even know what that something is yet, but he's drawn to you. He's craving the connection, and texting you first is his way of keeping that door open. Now, some women brush this off. They think, oh, he's just friendly. But here's the thing, men don't consistently text women they're not interested in. They just don't. They might respond if you reach out, but they're not going out of their way to start conversations, unless you're occupying mental real estate. So if he's always the one initiating, if he's always finding reasons to talk to you, if he's sending you messages at random times of the day, especially late at night, then yeah, he's fantasizing about you. He's imagining what it would be like if things were different, if you were his, if he could say the things he's really thinking. Sign 2. The second sign is harder to fake. His body language gives him away. When a man is fantasizing about you, his body reacts before his brain can catch up. He'll lean in when you talk. He'll mirror your movements without realizing it. He'll find excuses to touch you, lightly, casually, nothing aggressive, but it's there. A hand on your lower back when you're walking through a door, a brush of fingers when he hands you something. And the eyes. God, the eyes are the biggest tell. He'll look at you like he's trying to memorize you, like he's studying every detail, and when you catch him, he'll look away just a little too quickly, like he got caught doing something he shouldn't. Because he did. He was imagining you in a way that goes beyond the present moment. I remember this one time I was talking to a guy at a bar. We'd met through mutual friends, and we were just chatting, but I noticed he kept angling his body toward me, even when other people joined the conversation. He wasn't looking at them. He was locked in on me. And when I laughed, he'd smile like he was proud of himself for making me laugh, like it was some kind of achievement. That's the thing. When a man is fantasizing about you, making you happy becomes important to him. Your reactions matter. Your attention matters. He's not just having a conversation. He's performing. He's showing you the version of himself he thinks you'll like. And his body is doing all the things his words aren't saying yet. So watch for it. Watch how he positions himself around you. Watch where his eyes go. Watch how he reacts when you're near, because his body will tell you what his mouth won't. So I had a choice to make. I could ignore all of this and pretend I didn't notice. I could play dumb, let him keep building his fantasy without ever addressing it. Or I could acknowledge it. Not in a confrontational way, but in a way that let him know I saw him, that I understood what was happening. I chose the latter. Because here's what I've learned. Ignoring attraction doesn't make it go away, it just makes things weird. It creates this unspoken tension that nobody wants to deal with. So the next time he texted me, I responded differently. I didn't play coy. I didn't overthink it. I just engaged. I asked him real questions. I let the conversation go deeper. And I watched what happened. He opened up. He started sharing things he hadn't before. He started being more honest about how he saw me. And that's when I realized something important. When you meet someone's fantasy with reality, one of two things happens. Either the fantasy falls apart because it can't survive real intimacy, or it deepens into something real. Something grounded. Something that actually has a chance. And I wanted to know which one this was. So I kept going. I kept being present. I kept being honest. And I waited to see what would happen next, because the truth is, you can't control whether someone fantasizes about you. But you can control how you respond to it. You can either let it live in the shadows, or you can bring it into the light and see what it really is. Sign 3. The third sign is one a lot of women miss. He remembers everything you say. And I don't mean the big stuff. I mean the little stuff. The throwaway comments. The random details. You mention you like a certain type of coffee, and 3 weeks later he brings it up. You tell him about a band you listened to in high school, and suddenly he's listening to them too. He's cataloging everything. He's filing it away. Because when a man is fantasizing about you, every piece of information becomes valuable. It's ammunition for future conversations. It's proof that he's paying attention. It's a way to show you that you matter to him. I tested this once. I told a guy I'd never really liked strawberries. Just a random thing that came up. And 2 months later, we were at a restaurant. And when dessert came, he said, "You're not big on strawberries, right?" I was stunned, because who remembers something that small? Someone who's been thinking about you, that's who. Someone who's replaying your conversations in his head. Someone who's imagining scenarios where he knows you better than anyone else. That's the fantasy. He's building this version of you in his mind, and every detail you give him adds to it. He's not just listening to be polite. He's listening because you're the story he's telling himself. And if you're seeing this sign, if he's bringing up things you barely remember saying, if he's referencing old conversations like they just happened, if he's showing you that he actually hears you, then yeah, you're definitely on his mind in a big way. If you're still watching this, and you're starting to see these signs in someone you know, go ahead and subscribe. Because we're about to get into the deeper stuff. The stuff that most people don't talk about. The stuff that actually explains why men behave this way and what it means for you. So after I realized he was remembering everything, I started testing it. Not in a cruel way, just in a curious way. I'd mention something small and see if it came back up later. I'd drop a detail about my life and wait to see if he'd reference it. And every single time, he did. He'd weave it into conversations like he'd been holding on to it, like it mattered. And that's when I understood the full picture. This wasn't just casual interest. This was someone who was actively constructing a version of me in his mind. Someone who was imagining what it would be like to know me fully, to be close to me, to be part of my world. And the more I saw it, the more I realized how common this is. Men do this all the time. They fantasize about women they're drawn to. They create elaborate scenarios. They imagine conversations. They picture moments that haven't happened yet. And the women they're doing this about usually have no idea, because men are taught not to be too obvious, not to come on too strong. So they hide it in small gestures, in careful attention, in the way they show up. But once you know what to look for, it's impossible to miss. Sign 4. Sign number 4. He finds excuses to be near you. This one is huge, because proximity matters. When a man is fantasizing about you, being in your physical space becomes a priority. He'll show up to events he knows you'll be at. He'll suggest hangouts that include you. He'll engineer situations where you're likely to cross paths. And when he is near you, he lingers. He doesn't rush off. He finds reasons to stay, to keep talking, to extend the moment. I've seen this play out so many times. A guy who just happened to be at the same coffee shop, a coworker who always takes his break when you do, a friend who always ends up sitting next to you at group dinners. It's not coincidence. It's intentional. It's him trying to maximize the time he gets with you, because in his fantasy, you're together more than you actually are. So, he's trying to close that gap. He's trying to make the fantasy more real by being physically present. And the more he does this, the more invested he becomes. Because every interaction feeds the story he's telling himself. Every conversation gives him more material. Every moment near you makes the fantasy feel more possible. So if you notice a guy consistently finding ways to be around you, even when it doesn't make logical sense, that's a major sign. He's not just enjoying your company. He's chasing a feeling. He's trying to get closer to the version of you that lives in his head. And he's hoping that if he's around you enough, something will shift, something will click, something will finally happen. And then one night, everything changed. We were at a party, and he'd been drinking just enough to lower his guard. We ended up alone on a balcony, and he just said it. He told me he thought about me all the time, that he replayed our conversations, that he'd been trying to figure out if I felt anything similar. And there it was, the fantasy out in the open. No more subtext, no more guessing, just raw honesty. And I'll be real with you, I wasn't shocked, I'd seen it coming. But hearing it out loud still shifted something, because now I had to respond. I had to decide what this was going to be. And here's what I've learned about moments like this. They reveal everything. Not just about him, but about you, about what you want, about whether the fantasy is mutual or if it's one-sided. I didn't owe him anything. I didn't have to feel the same way, but I did owe him honesty. So I told him the truth. I told him I'd noticed, that I'd been paying attention too, and that I didn't know yet what I wanted, but I wasn't going to pretend I hadn't seen what was happening. And that conversation, that honesty, it completely changed the dynamic. Because we weren't hiding anymore. We weren't playing games. We were just two people being real about what was happening between us. And that's the thing. Fantasies can't survive in the light unless there's something real underneath them. So bringing it into the open either kills it or it transforms it into something deeper. Sign 5. The fifth and final sign, he engages with your digital life in a specific way. He's not just liking your posts. He's watching your stories. He's commenting. He's sending you things he saw that reminded him of you. He's staying connected to you even when you're not physically together. And this is huge in the modern dating landscape. Because social media gives men a way to stay present in your life without being intrusive. They can keep tabs on you. They can see what you're doing. They can engage just enough to stay on your radar. And when a man is fantasizing about you, he's not passive about this. He's active. He's checking your profile. He's noticing when you post. He's one of the first to view your story. And he's using that information to fuel the fantasy. He sees a photo of you at a restaurant, and he imagines being there with you. He sees you post about a movie, and he imagines watching it together. Every piece of content you share becomes part of the narrative he's building. I once had a guy who would screenshot my Instagram stories and send them to me with comments. Like he wanted me to know he was paying attention, that he was seeing everything. And at first I thought it was sweet. But then I realized it was part of the fantasy. He was trying to create a dialogue. He was trying to make our digital interaction feel more intimate, more personal. So if a guy is consistently engaging with your online presence, if he's always one of the first to see what you post, if he's using it as a way to stay connected to you, that's a clear sign he's thinking about you more than he's letting on. But here's where things get complicated. Because once the fantasy is out in the open, you have to deal with reality. And reality is messy. It doesn't always match what either of you imagined. After that conversation on the balcony, things got tense. Not in a bad way, but in an uncertain way. Because now we both knew. And knowing changed everything. He started pulling back a little. Not because he lost interest, but because he was scared. Scared of rejection. Scared of ruining what we had. Scared that the reality wouldn't live up to the fantasy. And I got it. I felt the same way. Because once you acknowledge attraction, you can't unknow it. You can't go back to the way things were. You either move forward or you let it die. So we tried moving forward. Slowly. Carefully. We went on an actual date, and it was fine. Not magical, not terrible, just fine. And that's when I realized something important. Fantasies are perfect. Reality isn't. And the gap between the two can be jarring. He'd built me up in his head to be this version of myself that I couldn't possibly live up to, and I'd done the same with him. We'd both been imagining something that didn't exist, and when we tried to make it real, it felt forced. It felt like we were performing for each other instead of just being ourselves. And that's the risk of fantasy. It can trap you. It can make you chase something that was never real to begin with. The final confrontation. So we had to talk again. And this time, it wasn't romantic. It wasn't charged. It was just honest. I told him I thought we'd both gotten caught up in an idea of each other, that the fantasy had become bigger than the actual connection. And he agreed. He said he'd been so focused on trying to make me like him that he forgot to just be himself. And I'd been doing the same thing. I'd been trying to match the version of me he'd created in his head instead of just showing up as I actually was. And that's the trap. That's the thing people don't talk about. Fantasies can be exciting. They can be intoxicating. But they can also prevent real intimacy. Because when you're so busy imagining what could be, you miss what actually is. So we decided to let it go. Not because we didn't care about each other, but because we cared enough to admit that we'd been chasing something that wasn't real. And you know what? That conversation was more intimate than any of the fantasy ever was. Because it was honest. It was vulnerable. It was two people seeing each other clearly and choosing truth over illusion. And that's the lesson. That's what I want you to take away from this. If a man is fantasizing about you, it's not inherently good or bad. It just is. But what matters is what you do with it. Do you feed the fantasy? Do you ignore it? Or do you bring it into the light and see if there's something real underneath? The Jungian ending. Becoming whole. Here's what I learned from all of this. When someone fantasizes about you, they're not really seeing you. They're seeing a projection, a version of you that fits the story they're telling themselves about who they are and what they want. And the same is true in reverse. When you're caught up in whether someone is thinking about you, imagining you, fantasizing about you, you're also projecting. You're making them into something they might not be. And the path to real connection isn't through fantasy. It's through seeing people as they actually are. Flawed. Complex. Human. It's through letting go of the perfect version you've created in your head and being present with the messy, imperfect reality. That's what individuation is. It's about becoming whole by integrating the parts of yourself you've been projecting onto others. It's about recognizing that the man fantasizing about you isn't your savior, your validation, or your worth. He's just a person, and you're just a person. And if there's real connection to be had, it won't come from fantasy. It'll come from showing up honestly, from being brave enough to be seen as you actually are. So yeah, now I know the signs. I can spot when a man is fantasizing about me. But more importantly, I know what to do with that information. I don't need it to feel good about myself. I don't need to chase it or feed it or make it into something it's not. I just see it for what it is, and I choose reality over illusion every single time, because that's where real love lives. Not in a fantasy, in the truth.